reason I'm celebrating is because I'm just like shocked. This is one of the few times where the Supreme Court has actually said, the federal level has actually said, yeah, we have less power than we were giving ourselves. That is amazing thing to me. That to me is like a win. I'm like, yes, like finally send things back to the states. And I don't think for the percentage of people who are actually not incensed enough to be tweeting and actually going out and protesting, what percent of those people do you think understand that it's going to be going back to the states?
Very few. because like some, like my friend who complained, like she lives in a blue state and she's complaining like about this, and I'm like, the state you live in has expanded abortion. It's like you can go anytime you want. And then I was like, and even if you lived in a red state, you could probably drive across a border to a blue state and get it anyway. And it's like, it's not like this is not a nationwide ban. And it's like, oh well, this isn't good enough. It's like all the stuff going on in the country right now, inflation, gas prices, rising interest rates. It's like, I don't see why this is the #1 issue for people unless you're already very well off, which I think in the case of this person is probably because it's like, people are worried about, I mean, I see all these tweets and photos of people posting like, this is how much it costs to fill up my tank. My grocery bill has doubled. Those are things people are worried about. I mean, the average person, again, unless you were already very well off, I mean, you worry about this stuff.
Yeah. And with this going back to the states, this is part of why I also don't think it's going to get as wild and crazy as the summer of 2020, for example, because I think most sensible people will actually start understanding that the most angry people already live in places, like 90% of the most angry people already live in places where it's nothing much is really going to change. I don't think also most people understand that primarily the majority of abortions are done in the first trimester. Thankfully, I'm really glad to hear that, because they'll actually look at that whole development and things like that of the fetus. To me, that's before the brain is developed. That's before like the nervous system is there. So to me, that's a point where you can say, okay, is that life? Is that not life? There's discussions to be had in there, and that's where I'm still kind of floating around, like, where does it actually become life? So most of them are that way, and I wasn't even aware of this, but most of these are actually done where they don't actually go to the clinic anymore. But people get, I think like almost half of them, people get things mailed to them, can get a pill mailed to them, and they just do it at home. It's I guess that's how far the science has come. Not the science TM, but actually that's how far the science of this procedure of ending gestation has come. And something like that, there's some states that now, I think there's we'll probably put up the map on the screen later on, but I'm just, my general idea with the states, like even if you have that, like, to be mailed in, you might be in a state where it's illegal to actually have a clinic, and then they said we're going to be actually, the people that I've heard talking about this were saying we're going to actually go after the people who are doing the procedure, not the women who are getting the procedure, but if you're a doctor or if you're a clinic that has given one, you can be held accountable by the law. That's so it's kind of like the prostitution thing, where it's like, it's the inverse of the prostitution thing mostly, where they arrest the John who gets it from the prostitute, but the prostitute is normally let go in some of those cases. Whereas in this case, it's like the person who actually goes to get the procedure doesn't get arrested, but the person giving the procedure, giving the thing, is the illegal thing. Not the person purchasing the illegal thing, but the person giving the illegal thing, supplying the illegal thing. So it's not even like drugs, because people who buy drugs also get arrested, like the people. Anyway, so it's something like that, where will they be preventing people from mailing? Like current administration, do you imagine they're going to have the federal government researching and seeing if people in Texas are getting pills mailed to them from California? I have a suspicion that they won't be checking that.
They don't even get stuff right with income taxes, and like if people filed late or people didn't file at all and things like that. And it's like, if millions of women nationwide, like you say, getting stuff across state lines, traveling back and forth, like I really don't think the government is going to keep tabs on all that. It's just, even if they wanted to, it's too much.
So I think for most people, they just realize that they will eventually realize that not too much is changing. So for me, I think to actually realize and see where the state's actually going to end up, you need to wait until about 2025. That's after these midterms. Yes, some people will bring it up, but I think, as Stephen mentioned, there's many other things going on that I don't think is going to be a primary issue. Even before that current inflation, before the increased inflation that you'll be seeing towards the actual election and things like that, I think they still said there's billions of dollars that have been let go, that have been given to states, that the states haven't actually injected yet into the system. So the inflation will probably even go higher and things like that. The war in Ukraine is probably going to end, so they're going to have that Putin's inflation is already something that people don't really believe, Putin's price hike.
Yeah.
But once that is actually gone, the people will be more focused. There'll be less distractions. They're going to try and push this stuff. It's not going to work that much. So even before this, abortion was normally considered to be like a 6%, 7%, single digit actual issue of being like, this is something I care about the most. There's many other things where people cared about more than that.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking 2025. That's one midterm. That's a presidential election with more state level elections at that time. And then by that time, you'll see how states kind of end up. And I think it's going to be about 35 states will have a legal limit of on-demand, no questions asked abortion before the second trimester. So that's about 12 weeks. And there will be considerations for forced conception and health risks of the female or child. And this is what most people around the world consider ethical and reasonable. Then 8 to 10 states will have legal limits on demand, no questions abortion before the third trimester. And wait, I think I got it wrong with the trimester on 12 weeks. It's not 12 weeks.
Here's an example of how some communication can have limitations due to several things. Here I was confusing 52 weeks in a 12-month year to the 36 weeks in the 9-month average of pregnancy. It's even in the etymology of the word, trimester, which I think is in Latin 3 monsters or something. But that's division of anything into thirds while using months. Like a semester that you use in school years, half of the years and things like that. Here it would be 4.5 months, which would be 18 weeks. But regardless, when people are having regular conversations, they don't have the ability to come edit things in post to add more clarity. So give people some leeway, ask them what they mean, and you might find you actually agree with them.
We'll have that in the second trimester. So you're talking about 22. But this is the key thing, because right now in America, in most places in developed countries, at 21 weeks, 22 weeks, 23 weeks, around there, there's the medical ability to have viability of that fetus outside, just on the basic hospitals in most of the West right now, in most of the developed world. If you're here like somewhere in Kenya, I think the average hospital, you have to be around, I don't want to say the average hospital, the hospital here in Nairobi, the capital city, the top hospitals, they might have the ability to have viability around that 20-year age. But then that's less than 1% of the hospitals in the country. So for most of the hospitals in developing countries, if you're talking viability, that's more in like 35, 40, where you have that kind of thing. There's no incubators, there's no doctors, like the prenatal care doctors. That's activity's not there. So I think once people start realizing that, that'll kind of change it. So you'll have 8 to 10 states saying the second trimester will have that. So before the third trimester, with similar considerations of forced conception and health issues. And then the remainder will have legal limits within the first trimester. And this is like almost like no abortions, where you can just get it on demand. And I think you will still have similar considerations. We're going to be talking about mentioning topics and things like here that are already adult mentality required for, of course, rape, incest. That will be in there. I think there'll be very few, it might be like 2 or 3 states tops that might not have rape and incest in there, but I'll be very surprised if anything more than that actually do that. What's your general take on how it will end up?
Yeah, I mean, I'd imagine states like Oklahoma, Mississippi, Alabama, there'd be a few notable exceptions, but I think by and large, like, I mean, as you said yourself, I mean, most Americans are fine with abortion within the first trimester. It's just beyond that, and yeah.
Thank you for listening. This has been a clip from an actual longer recording that I'll try to leave a link to on the screen or somewhere around here where you're listening to this.
Presents. 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 Presents.
Peasants.
Okay. Okay.